Let's move on. Russian forces must be pushed out of, and I quote, the whole of Ukraine. That is according to the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss in what amounts to the clearest statement yet of what the UK's objectives are. In a major speech at Mansion House in London, she said victory for Ukraine was a strategic imperative for the West and that it must use its strength to deter future Russian aggression.
Britain has always stood up to bullies. We've always been risk takers. The war in Ukraine is our war. It's everyone's war, because Ukraine's victory is a strategic imperative for all of us. Heavy weapons, tanks, aeroplanes, digging deep in our inventories, ramping up production. We need to do all of this.
The comments imply that Russian forces must leave not just the territory occupied since their invasion on the 24th of February, but also areas that were invaded and annexed 8 years ago, like Crimea in the south and parts of the eastern Donbas region. She also called on Ukraine's allies to double down in their support. And in the past hour, Poland has said 3 million refugees have now fled the country from Ukraine since the war began. Joining us from Brussels is Alexei Makiev, a Ukrainian ambassador and special envoy on sanctions. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, Vanessa. Thank you for having me.
So you hear what the Foreign Secretary Liz Truss had said. Russian forces must be pushed out of the whole of Ukraine. I mean, you might think these are fine words, but the likelihood of that happening is slim. Or maybe you don't. What do you think?
This was a great speech, and this is a great line. What we hear, the war is in Ukraine is our war. The whole speech is exactly what makes UK and then US, Baltic states, and Poland real leaders among Western nations in consolidating support of Ukraine.
Yes,
and this is exactly what we've been saying to our partners since 2014, as Russia invaded Ukraine and grabbed Crimea and Donbas. We said, look at this war through Ukrainian eyes. Just imagine, Russia grabbed 7% of our territory.
yes.
And what was then reply of many nations? Well, moderate sanctions, but continuing business as usual with Russia. And now, during 2 months of Russia's large-scale war against Ukraine, we have seen lots of evidence of atrocities, of war crimes. Dozens of cities and villages have been destroyed.
Yes.
Thousands of people have been killed. So Ukraine has clearly said what will help to stop this bloodshed. And what we hear now from Foreign Secretary, from UK, from US, from many partners, is really great. We know how to stop this war, and there are 3 things to do.
Right. What are they? Because, I mean, I think lots of people listening, when you said we know how to stop this war, they would be thinking, well, how? How do you stop this war? So you tell me there are 3 things. I'm going to write them down so I make sure I know what we're dealing with here. How do we go about stopping this war?
Give Ukraine 3 things, because our guys and girls are fighting on the front line, and they are fighting for every European citizen.
Right. What
So
do you
give
need?
us
What do you
3
want?
things.
Yes.
More weapons,
Right.
tougher sanctions, and more financial support. Those 3 things are key to win this war, which is, according to Foreign Secretary, a strategic imperative.
Do we have the weapons to give? Are they available to us to give you? Do they exist somewhere, these weapons?
Oh, yes. These weapons exist. And this was really great that several days ago in German base in Ramstein, the US gathered over 14 nations and compiled a good list of weapons to be delivered to Ukraine. We need anti-aircraft systems to fight Russians back from the skies, because, as you know, every single day Russian rockets are falling and bombs are falling from the skies on the Ukrainian citizens, killing civilians. So this must stop. We need anti-tank equipment to stop Russians pushing on our soil in the east of the country. And of course, we need armored vehicles, multiple launch rocket systems to push Russians back.
And as we speak now, how is the United Kingdom responding to this urgent need in Ukraine?
From the very beginning of this invasion back in February, United Kingdom has provided Ukraine with great support and with great weapons. Even earlier, we have received so-called NLAWs, anti-tank missiles, which helped Ukraine a lot to fight back Russian troops from the suburbs of Kiev. And we won this battle for Kiev practically a month ago. So now all the fights are in the east and the south of the country, and we continue receiving weapons from United Kingdom, and this is absolutely great, and we appreciate what this government has done to help us winning this battle.
All right, let's go on to sanctions. How significant, how effective have the sanctions imposed so far been, as far as you can see?
Sanctions are good, but they are not good enough. From what we see, Russia is suffering. According to some estimations, Russian economy this year will contract from 15 to 20%. What we see is the inflation is going up. What we see is in terms of foreign debts, Russia is heading for default. But we don't see any influence on the labor market in Russia yet. And this is why we say the sanctions must be tougher. And first and foremost, it's all about oil, gas, and coal embargo. And this is exactly what will hurt Russia, because just imagine, every day the West pays up to $1 billion for Russian fossil fuel. This is financing of Russian military machine.
And your third request is financial support. How generous generous, I mean, that's one way of describing it. How forthcoming, let's put it that way, have Western nations been with money which you need?
This is where we need a bit more, because imagine if Russian economy contracts up to 20%. Just imagine we have 4 million people escaped the country. We have 6 million people as internally displaced persons. Over 40% lost their jobs. And we see that our economy would contract more than 50%. So this is why we need that financial support. And this is one of the main topics during our negotiations with international financial institutions and the governments. And we feel that, as UK Foreign Secretary said, as Secretary of State Blinken said earlier this week in Kiev, that the West is supporting Ukraine and will continue this support.
And what are your thoughts on response in this country in terms of invitations to Ukrainian families to come here, to find sanctuary, to come and live in people's homes and be part of families here? Are you heartened by this, or do you really feel that nobody wants to leave Ukraine anyway? No one wants to come so far away, and ideally this wouldn't even be happening in the first place?
You know, as a diplomat, I was always trying to talk to communities, to people in all the countries. And what I see today from the response of Britons, of Poles, Romanians, it warms my heart. It's really great. And this solidarity, which every Ukrainian feels in London, in Berlin, in Warsaw, this is absolutely great. And our people are received, and the helping hand is everywhere. And that what shall move politicians in different countries to feel that spirit of support and to make steps, to take actions in support of their own voters, in support of Ukrainian people who need now protection, and in support of Ukrainian army, which fights and holds the eastern front of the whole Europe.
And let me ask you something else. When first Russia invaded Ukraine. I think I would be surprised if there wasn't a single person listening to this programme this morning who didn't feel this incredible dissonance between normal life, which seemed to be enfolding us, all our normal concerns, our normal celebrations, our normal preoccupations, and what was going on so very close to us in Europe, just a very short flight away in Ukraine. So how can I be buying a pair of shoes when people in Ukraine are losing their lives, having their homes bombed, forced into exile? How can I be applying for an increase in my salary? How can I be having my toenails painted? How can I be planning a wedding for my daughter when this is going on in Ukraine? It just felt impossibly difficult and unbearably sort of guilt-inducing, and also incredibly unproductive to be doing that. You just felt that this couldn't be happening so close to home and you carrying on as normal. Then, of course, as the weeks go by and as the story is relegated from the front page of the newspapers many times now to page 4, page 5, and also the pages, though tragic and horrifying, look very similar day in, day out. I think people get back into the groove of their own lives, maybe, and the sort of acute nature of what's going on starts to feel more normal, which is a terrible thing to say about human suffering. But I'm just trying to speak to see how you feel about that, about us leading our normal lives so close to people who are losing their lives and losing all they've lived for, homes, futures, everything. How do you feel about that juxtaposition?
I started with saying that it would be really great if people in Europe would look at this war through Ukrainian eyes.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what we feel today. For Ukraine, the war will be on page 1 until we win this war. And it has been on page 1 since 2014. So this is why we really need this concentrated support of government, and we are empowered by this warmth of the hearts of people in Europe, UK and US, which are fully behind Ukraine.
Thank you very much indeed for talking to us this morning, and very much love and affection to you and everyone going through this hellish time. Thank you very much indeed.